you think the critique is valid that the church, maybe there's certainly conservative evangelicals, have not done enough or said enough on the race issue over the past, however many years, decades, and so the sentiment is, well, if you're not going to do anything, that why weren't we leading out on this issue? And because there's a group like Black Lives Matter who's at least doing something, or at least trying, bringing this issue up, we're going to gravitate to them because at least they're doing something. Do you resonate with that, or do you think that's a unfair critique of the church?
I think it's a both and. I think that there were some churches who did some things. I would say that could more have been done? Sure. But I think that we can use more also as a relative term, like right. What needed to be done. Now, when we look at the liberal church, I feel like the liberal church spoke out more than the conservative church. Right. And so, yes, now what we're finding is people are like, well, at least Black Lives Matter is doing something, but we can't leave doctrine behind. Right. We can't leave truth behind. We have to make sure that what we're doing is in line with scripture and in truth. Otherwise, we're going to lose scripture and truth in our pursuit of justice. One
of the critiques one of my friends was telling me is like, he said that it's easy for, as a white person, for me to sort of reject a lot of what's happening because I can just I can say, well, I'm not Marxist, I'm against CRT. So therefore I can just use that as a way to not engage with these issues. Do you think that there's probably some validity to that some, that maybe some white people are just using this as an excuse and kind of CRT, and we stand on this as like, we're against CRT as an excuse not to really wrestle with the historic, reality of racism within the church?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that people can, just hold that argument up. Well, that's CRT and I don't need to engage with that.
Right.
Well, I think that there's impacts of racism that we see within our society, that we have seen within the church. And how do we engage with that? How do we have that conversation? How do pastors speak to their congregants about that? How do we as brothers and sisters explore those conversations? Just because something is CRT and I disagree with it doesn't mean that racism doesn't exist.
Right. One of the things that some friends of mine have said is they said, okay, I get the critique of, as the CRT critique has kind of, over the last couple months has kind of been everywhere, within evangelical circles. Now you're seeing some of either the groups or some people that maybe have embraced some of this to sort of respond and say how they're not fully embracing CRT, but they're using some of the questions or things that raises as a diagnostic on evangelicalism. What do you think about that? So they would say, yeah, I agree that there are some problems with CRT, but at the same time, it's also bringing up some of the issues within the church that are very helpful for us. We need to talk about them, and these are helpful discussions to have. And so I think we can use parts of CRT maybe to have that discussion. Have you thought through that?
Again, I don't know that the church needs a secular framework to work through her issues.
Yeah.
Like that is, and that presupposes that these issues are truly issues within the church, or are they issues that culture is now saying these are issues that you need to address?
Right.
There has to be clear distinction. And again, that comes with understanding scripture and a definition of terms. So culture says we should be looking at justice. Well, if culture defines justice as this, but scripture defines it as what I'm holding in my hands, I don't know that we really need to have redefinition and call a council to explore issues about justice when the culture's definition is clearly unbiblical. I want to talk about issues of racism within the church or statistics and things like that. I believe that we can have that conversation, but I don't need a secular framework to tell me how to do that.
Every voice